Allow me just a brief moment here, folks, to make sure that we are live. I've done this before and I've started realizing we're here, but it seems that we are live. Thank you very much for joining me. There is a common narrative that weight loss is a very depriving experience, that it requires great sacrifice. It is a chore. I can't really deny these things, can I? All of those things are true to a degree. It does require huge habit change, a change in your beliefs, in how you see food, in how you see yourself, and how you talk and treat yourself. An upheaval of old habits, battling with those cravings. It certainly isn't a walk in the park. That said, there are things that you can do that make this process of slimming down considerably easier than I think many of the mainstream strategies for weight loss would actually suggest. And so in this video, I'm going to run you through 6 strategies that are going to make this process of slimming down much, much easier for you. So we're going to roll the titles here. Whilst we do this, we're obviously live. So to those joining me right now, feel free to throw in some questions. I'll get to some Q&A if I can as we go here. So we're rolling the titles, and then we're back with our 6 strategies to make losing weight easier than ever before. Let's do this. Okay, here we go then. We're going to dive straight in. Number 1. You've heard me talk about this extensively, but this time, for the first time in some time in many, many videos, I'm actually going to break down how you achieve this. You're going to need a moderate calorie deficit and not a really aggressive one. The pitfalls of being very harsh with your calorie deficit, I think it's quite obvious. The sustainability, there's a sustainability factor there. There's the crash and burn element, the fact that you're literally starving yourself. That's not health promoting. Okay, the weight will come off pretty quickly, pretty immediately as well, but that's not health promoting. The effect it can have on metabolic inefficiency, hormones, for medium to long-term weight loss, going really aggressive with your calorie deficit, it's just not worth the trouble. The juice isn't worth the squeeze with that one. Just for a bit faster weight loss initially, it's not going to last. And so a much more sustainable, a much more healthful, and certainly a much more practical way to do this is to have actually quite a conservative, quite a small, compared to what many people have tried in the past, whether knowingly or not, calorie deficit. One that doesn't leave you feeling bugged out, one that doesn't leave you feeling ravenous after every meal, like you are deficient. And that is going to make, again, this process of losing weight easier. Now, bottom line, you're still going to be in a calorie deficit. So you might feel sometimes the repercussions of that. But yeah, it'll be a much more agreeable, let's say, than what is often maybe advised with the juice fast, the very heavily sort of calorie counting methodologies where the restriction is 500, 600, 700, 800 calories, even 500 calories, which is a common trope, isn't it, in the mainstream health and weight loss world? Well, that's totally inappropriate for, say, many women. Okay, let's say women with average height, average activity levels. A 500 calorie deficit is arguably already too aggressive anyway, and that's just the go-to. So let's break it down here. Here's what I want you to do. You've heard me talk about this before. You're thinking, well, Ryan, you're not really offering anything new here. I'm going to walk through this. What I want you to do is open up a separate browser here. You're going to do this live with me now and go to omnicalculator.com. There are other calculator softwares out there, but let's do it on omnicalculator.com because that's fairly accessible and easy to use. And all you're going to do there is you're going to see your statistics, type them in. So drop in your weight, your age, height, so on and so forth. And what that's going to do, depending on whether you use the Harris-Benedict equation, actually, let's do that. So let me actually pull it up here. I'm going to do it on my browser, omnicalculator.com. And I think if you scroll down, you'll actually see that they've got a simple on the left-hand side and an advanced mode. I want you to press so that you've got the advanced mode, where it actually gives you the Harris-Benedict equation that factors in exercise. And that's what we want to do here, because it's all well and good calculating your maintenance calories sedentary, but most people don't just sit, I would hope, on a settee or at a desk all day long, I would hope anyway. So omnicalculator.com, plug in your weight, height, age, sex, and it's going to throw in your BMR then. You can also select, as you'll see in the column PAL, you can actually select how much exercise you do. It gives you little to no exercise, so sedentary lifestyle, light exercise 1 to 2 times a week, moderate exercise 2 to 3 times a week, hard exercise 4 to 5 times a week, and so on. Now, I do actually admittedly have a problem with this because I do think the Harris Benedict equation, I do think it actually suggests greater calorie intake for the exercise than I actually think is right. Um, that's a bit wordy. How do I make that more simplistic sounding? Basically, the way it factors in the calculation that it does, like for example, for sedentary exercise, it takes your BMR and then it multiplies it by 1.2, which for sedentary exercise, 20% increase on calorie output. I don't think that's quite right. I actually think that's too much, too generous. Um, and so I actually, admittedly, I don't use when I'm working with my clients the Harris Benedict equation because I think it's actually too generous on the exercise front. I think it gives too many calories. However, I had to give you something, right? I've got to give you something to work with. So this is definitely going to be a good start for many of you. So once you use that, enter in your activity levels there, and you're going to get at the bottom there, you'll see your total energy expenditure per day. Then what I want you to do, just as a starting point, is minus 300 calories off that figure 300 calories off that figure, and that is going to be your calorie deficit to get started with weight loss. And that's what I suggest doing. So that's what a moderate calorie deficit is going to look like for you using the Harris Benedict equation there at omnicalculator.com. And yeah, I think this is just a much more sort of less aggressive, and therefore it's got some longevity to it as a means to slimming down. Versus something, as I say, that's really, really aggressive and promises really fast weight loss. So that's the first case. You need a moderate calorie deficit. Now, when I talk about this, some people get a bit of a bee in their bonnet thinking, oh, well, does that mean I have to track calories? Absolutely not. Now you can take this number that you've used that with our calculation here, this final total energy expenditure minusing the 300. You can take that calorie deficit amount, you can plug it into MyFitnessPal and Chronometer, and you can use that as your guideline, your flag in the sand, your North Star for 2 to 3 days. And that's going to give you a rough idea of where you need to be. And then you won't need to track again, right? So long as you're not ridiculously varied with what you're eating and you want a new meal constantly in your diet, which most people don't, as long as you've got a decent amount of repetition and you make a note of like portion sizes, that sort of thing from those couple of days where you are tracking calories, you'll be fine to just continuously do that and then watch your weight move. Now, of course, as much as I have walked people through how to calculate a personalized figure for them, there are flaws with calorie calculators, right? They're based on generalistic norms. There is still an anecdotal and a trial and error sort of element to what I do with my clients. As much as I do the calculations on the back end for them, I would say 1 or 2 in 10 clients don't actually lose weight initially because there's trial and error to this, right? It is anecdotal as much as the calculations on paper make sense. Sometimes you do have to do some fiddling around. So I cannot promise here that this exercise I've just run you through is going to mean that you start losing weight right away. I can't. But I like 300 calories as a starting point without risking being ridiculously aggressive. And then you can shave off 50 calories a day, for example, from there and just see what it takes to actually get the numbers moving. But that's a great place to start. So strategy number 1 for making sure weight loss is nice and easy for you is actually having a sensible calorie deficit and not something that is going to drive you nuts, leave you feeling fatigued, lethargic, ravenous. That only has so much longevity to it. Strategy number 2, what you ideally need, and I've already sort of hinted at this, is a system that lets you lose weight without having to count calories. And preferably anyway, preferably. Now, some of you out there, you are calorie calculators. I don't attract so many to my channel, but you feel free. If there are no ramifications to you doing that and you're okay with tracking and measuring your food, do that. We've run through the Harris Benedict equation. You know what you need to shoot for. Have at it. Stick mostly to whole foods, of course, as I would advise. I don't like the flexible dieting sort of methodology, but have at it. You've got your numbers. You know what you need to do. This one doesn't really apply to you. But for the rest of you, ideally, if you're anything like me, you want a system to lose weight where you don't have to get neurotic about tracking this, tracking that, and it drives you bonkers and it can cultivate quite a poor relationship with food where you see everything as just data rather than nutrition quality. I don't really like that. I think as a means to an end or a transition period or an awareness period where you're learning a little bit more about where your calorie intake might be, I think calorie counting is fine in the short term. But do you really want to do it for the rest of your life? No, of course not for most people. So you need a system. You need something to work with. And there are 2 methods. Method number 1 is hire me or someone else as your coach. So you get told exactly what and how much to eat. as my clients do in their done for you plant-based meal plans, they know exactly what and how much to eat without having to track calories, and they fall into that sensible calorie deficit, no matter which options they pick for each meal. So they just get told what to eat without having to track. So that's quite nice. Now, for those of you that can't work with me or can't get that level of structure or personalization from a nutritionist, for example, or a weight loss coach, fair enough. What you need to do is you need to do what I suggested earlier, frankly, on the previous point. Track your calories for a couple of days, see where you come out, and then once you've found that sweet spot for calories, once you've got your Harris Benedict equation, and once you learn what, for example, 2,300, 1,800, 1,700 calories looks like, write down how much of each ingredient, write down what your meals actually contain, the amount, and then you can just repeat on autopilot. And like I said, provided on the previous point, provided you don't have loads of variety in your diet, provided you allow for some repetition, you don't have to be a robot with it, some repetition, you're going to naturally reach, you might be 50 calories give or take, but that's not a deal breaker. But you're naturally going to reach that calorie deficit target that we just set without having to track all the time. So just a couple of days doing that is going to get you very good at eyeballing. And so long as you are still using things like measuring cups, you're still sticking to tablespoons, you're still being honest when you look at a banana and you say, okay, that's probably a medium banana, you're still being pretty honest about that. You're going to be in the right calorie ballpark anyway without you having to track. This can be a bit scary, a bit daunting because it still requires some sort of intuition. But trust me, if you track your calories for, let's say, 2 to 5 days, not even anymore. I mean, a week at max, and you'll be flying after a week doing it 'cause you'll be really in the routine of it. But if you just give it 3 or 4 days, and then get rid of Chronometer, MyFitnessPal, do it for a couple of days, you will roughly know how to be in the right calorie ballpark. And so long as your weight's dropping, you don't really need to microanalyze and look at those calories again. And then when your weight stops dropping and you plateau, start looking at the calories again, see if there's something you're doing wrong, see if they've crept up slightly, see if you maybe need to shave, again, 50, 75 calories off your diet to get your weight moving. So that's really how you do it. That's how you lose weight without counting calories, is you do it temporarily to understand what it involves, to understand the sorts of meals, the quantity of portions that actually takes you to your calorie deficit target, and then it's on autopilot. There's no cheat code. The 50-50 plate and other visual plate guides, they can be useful, but they don't actually guarantee you're in a deficit. The only way to lose weight without counting calories is to still ensure that you've done some research previously on what a calorie deficit looks like for you, and then you can take that knowledge forward. There's no cheat code where you can just eat a handful. There's rules, isn't there? Just eat a handful of this, handful of this. You might be in a calorie deficit doing that, but number one, it's not guaranteed, and number one, it's not very accurate. It's too vague, and we like a little bit more specificity to guarantee results. So that's step number 2 to easy weight loss. Ensure you have a system to lose weight without you having to track everything, because it can drive people neurotic. And that's nice. It makes weight loss, again, less hard, contrary to popular narrative. Strategy number 3, you need to apply volume eating principles so you can eat big and feel full while still losing weight. How do you do this? You need to develop some understanding. I've talked about this extensively, so we don't need to go on too much about caloric density. You need to jump on Google and you need to type in vegan, calorie density table, vegan calorie density pyramid. And you're going to learn a little bit more just with 1 or 2 glances at this every now and again. You're going to learn a little bit more, even if you don't know the exact numbers, how many calories in a cup of oats, for example. Well, for example, I know that's usually about 320 to 330, depending on the type of oat, but rolled oats per US cup. That's about 330 calories. But I've been doing this for years, right? I should know that. You might not know that right now. And you don't need that level of detail. But to look at a calorie density chart and go, oh, I see now. The average vegetable is X many calories, or vegetables are in the X range of calories per 100 grams or per pound, whatever the unit is. Vegetables about a similar point. Oh, potatoes are a little bit more calorific, but not quite as calorific per pound or per gram as whole grains. And even in the whole grains, like some types of rice, some types of some types of whole grain, rather, rice, quinoa, they've all got a little bit of a different calorie density. Again, you don't need to really nerd out on this stuff and really dive into the semantics, but some understanding of, okay, this is how foods rank. Okay, beans are a little bit more than whole grains in calories per pound. Developing that understanding. Oh, nuts and seeds are all the way up here. Oh, oil. I see why oil's so problematic, because it's really got a high calorie density per tablespoon, per gram, per pound, whatever, per ounce, whatever your unit of measure. And to just develop some basic sort of ranking system in your mind's eye, some hierarchy for which foods have the greatest amount of calories per gram, per pound, per ounce, that's going to be really helpful in allowing you to assemble plates of food that actually give you lots of bang for their buck, lots of volume for few calories compared to other meals that you could potentially eat, right? If you have a meal that has lots of nuts and seeds in, chances are, if you want to equalize the calories with another meal, that meal is going to be much smaller than a meal that doesn't have that many nuts and seeds in it, doesn't have sort of avocado or zucchini or the fat-rich plant foods which contribute to greater caloric density. Does that make sense? So developing some awareness around these foods, which will take a little bit of time, but not much. You can spend an hour now and you'll have a good understanding of the different caloric densities between the various food groups under the plant foods diet. And that's going to be very, very helpful. And once you do this, you start understanding, okay, I can eat 3 ounces of strawberries, um, and that only gives me X amount of calories. Well, that's fantastic. Or every banana that I do is about 100, 110 calories. And that really fills me up more than the chocolate bars I used to eat, which give me like 200 calories and they're much smaller than the banana. And by the time I finish the chocolate bar, I kind of got that sweet tooth again and I want more chocolate or more candies, whatever. And this is really brilliant because it allows you to start realizing that, okay, it's not about eating less all the time. That's what makes weight loss hard, right? This is what this video is all about. How can we make weight loss easier as a plant-based diet? Well, certainly, eat more food. Eat more food without eating more calories. That's the secret. This idea of eat less and move more, whilst as a trope, as a mantra, it is absolutely true. Well, there's a bit more nuance to it, isn't it? Like, eat less of what? Eat less food volume, calories. Because the two are not the same. And I think some people are equating food, the amount of food you're eating, calories, and it depends what you're eating. They're not the same. There's overlap there. Generally speaking, the people that eat the most in terms of portions are actually eating the most calories. But you can actually hack this in your favor, start assembling those dishes that I'm always talking about, the loaded salads that my clients eat, right? The vegetable sandwiches that have some caloric dense foods in them, but they pack with so many veggies that they get these really big sandwiches or really big sort of wraps, tortilla wraps. They've got so many veggies in there and they are stuffed to the brim, utilizing, those really incredible foods like potatoes that have a wonderful intersection between calorie content and volume and size, and all the bulk that a potato provides for comparatively very few calories compared to many other foods. Once you understand more about this, you can start eating more, right? And doesn't that way make weight loss considerably easier? Back in the day, yeah, for me it was a proportion, a proportion, a proportion. That was just my go-to. Now I understand a lot more about this volume eating principle. That's what I have my clients do, but I can eat now very, very generously and still feel full and satisfied whilst losing weight, and what an advantage that is. Strategy number 4 to making weight loss considerably easier, and this one is actually not a one size fits all thing. Some people will be in the exception to the rule on this, the minority. But I personally feel that a nutrition focused approach is much easier. Because then you don't have to be in the gym constantly. Then you don't have to do loads of exercise. Now, for the fitness freaks, the gym rats out there, maybe you do want a more sort of fitness-centered approach, and therefore, because you're doing so much exercise, you can sort of have a bit more leeway with your diet. You can eat a lot more food. I understand that. Generally speaking, my philosophy throughout the years, for myself and with my, even though I'm a big lover of exercise, but certainly for my son and same place, I've been following a nutrition-focused approach. I don't know if you've heard the phrase, you can't outrun a bad diet. I mean, literally speaking, it's not true because you could. You could literally do so much exercise that you could eat a bunch of rubbish and still lose weight. It is possible, but it's not healthy, and most people don't do that. Most people can't sustain a really high output of exercise. And frankly, that's why I feel it's actually much easier to fix your nutrition habits. Then you can lose weight without having to spend all your life in the gym, all your life on a treadmill, all your life getting the steps in. And I think this does make weight loss easier. So having a nutrition focused approach. And what I like about this is you're going to eat anyway, right? You're going to eat throughout the day anyway. So why not just make healthier choices? Versus exercise, which you might not be doing that much exercise right now, it's like an addition to your behavior. It's a whole new set of habits you have to build. Whereas eating, you need to do that anyway. So it's more sort of replacement theory as opposed to adding a bunch of actions, a layer of new behavior to your life. I think it's easier to switch out things rather than adding all this exercise. And I do generally think, this simultaneously to what I've just said, I do generally think that exercise is weirdly underrated. Um, and a really neglected subject in the vegan plant-based world. I think we've become so it's all about the nutrition in the vegan plant-based world that we maybe underemphasize the role of exercise. So don't get me wrong, everything I'm sharing here, I don't want you to take it as a cop out to not do any exercise, right? That's certainly not my advice. But I just think if you're getting started with weight loss, one way to make it easier right now is to not have to do all the boot camp classes or spinning classes that people really believe they have to do to get that body fat off. Strategy number 5 for making sure weight loss is nice and easy. I think I've gone back and forth. I think the conclusion I've come to is that you need a plan that still lets you eat out sometimes, so it doesn't feel so brutal, so sacrificial. Right now, you don't want to be eating out every day. Obviously, that really could create the old slippery slope there, and be very hard. I mean, you can still eat out every day and be in a calorie deficit, but let's be honest, it's not ideal, is it? It's going to be really, really hard, and you might need to do some sort of meal skipping or intermittent fasting to sort of compensate. I don't think that's appropriate long term. I don't think that's the right way to do it. It's also pretty expensive. It's getting really expensive to eat out here in the UK, and the service is shocking. See, with inflation, you end up paying all this extra money. The service is awful. The food in the UK, I don't know if you've been to the UK and eaten British food, is very, very average. And so I think there's also a financial aspect to this as well. But I like this because it provides some freedom. I think the strictness with which I talk about, how I eat, how I encourage people to eat, I think it would probably, give people, I understand why, the impression that I am very, very Puritan and I have my clients never eat out. But speak to my clients. Hopefully, if there's some watching, they can leave a comment. I've got different rules for different folks, but generally I advise my clients allow themselves to eat out once a week if they wish to. And I think this is about the right balance. I think 2, 3 meals out a week, you could still lose weight. You could still be in that deficit overall. There's only 3 meals potentially out of 21 meals a week if you're having a 3 meal a day structure. So 3 and 21, it's not terrible. It probably isn't enough to stop weight loss on its own, providing that your other meals are on point. But at that point, are you sort of risking the slippery slope? You're always introducing that more oily, greasy food to your taste buds. Is that right? I don't know. You can make healthy choices, but that's depending on where you go out to eat, right? Um, but I think it's a bit risky. And I think I've landed on this 1 meal idea, 1 meal per week sort of allowance, let's say, for my vegan swim and sustain students, because I think it maintains the right level of structure with a sense of freedom, with a sense that this isn't a ridiculously sacrificial process. So you might want to give yourself permission to eat out. That said, some of you, if you're pretty hooked on the process of eating out, and it's something you do all the time, and you feel you become overly reliant on it, you might need a month of abstinence from it before you introduce this sort of 1 meal out per week rule. I've had clients do that as well in the past, and rightly so. But I like this. I like this idea of 1 meal out. I think it, broadly speaking, it tends to work for most folks. What should that meal out be? Well, obviously, I would suggest that it be as clean as it possibly can. I would suggest that you don't have a bunch of wine or some beers on the side, and you don't go for dessert. Obviously, I would suggest those things. But you still don't need to be perfect to get amazing life-changing health and weight loss results. So I appreciate that you can have the occasional G&T glass of wine. That I am okay with my clients occasionally having a bit of cake or a bit of dessert, and knowing that it's a very minor part of their overall diet, and generally speaking, they're cleaning up their diet no end and they're flying down the scale. So I do have no problem with that. But obviously, as a health coach, my advice is always going to be try and find the healthiest thing on the menu. The only problem with that is maybe it's just a boring old salad for you that's about 200 calories and you'd be ravenous. Don't do that, of course. Try and bulk it up somehow. But generally speaking, if you are eating out, stick to as many whole foods as you can. The occasional vegan burger, it's not going to kill you. But of course, it'd be remiss of me if I didn't mention. Um, really, best case scenario is that when you go out to eat, you eat very compliant foods. It might not fit your exact meal plan as what you're eating at home, but you're still eating with this whole food plant-based methodology. Maybe there's a bit of oil, yeah, but still going to be a quite fibrous meal. Still going to keep you in your calorie deficit. It's not going to be too wild. And if every now and again you have an Impossible or a Beyond Burger, bit of dessert, occasional glass of wine, pint of beer, etc., etc., it's not going to be the end of you, that's for sure. But just make sure that slippery slope doesn't hit you. So yeah, I think that's how you make weight loss a lot easier. Is you set some rules that allow you some flexibility and freedom with things like eating out, with things like a bit of alcohol every now and again without getting carried away. And the sixth thing you need to do, the sixth strategy you need to get right to ensure that weight loss isn't some crazy, arduous chore, and you sense that, wow, I actually could maintain this because it doesn't kill me, right? It doesn't leave me feeling massively deprived. You need really new habits and mindsets so you don't self-sabotage or internally resist this process. This is a bit of a can of worms to finish on, so I'm not going to go too much depth on this. I'll actually link, once the live is done, when you're watching the replay, I'll actually link my best mindset video, what I feel one of my better mindset videos is. Actually link that down below so you can go there for more on this. But I've given you, until this sixth strategy, I've given you a bunch of points today that help you with your food and exercise, right? And I think of these as the key variables for weight loss. But the mindset is really what allows you, mindset principles is really what allows you to implement good food habits, good exercise habits, right? It's the vehicle through which you execute on those things. You can have a great weight loss plan on paper for food and exercise. Does that actually mean you're going to stick to it and test if that plan actually works? Well, no, it's not a guarantee. The mindset, the beliefs, the attitudes, the habits, that's the stuff that sort of opens the door to test how effective your strategy is. And so if you have all of this self-sabotage inside of you, if you're an emotional eater or a binge eater, if you've got limiting beliefs, oh, I don't know if I'm capable of weight loss, I've failed all the time in the past, so maybe this isn't right for me. I'm too old, I'm going through menopause now. I heard people when they go through menopause, they gain a bunch of weight. I can't lose weight. If you're stuck with all these limiting beliefs about yourself, you're going to build up this internal resistance to weight loss that's going to lead you off track at various points. It's really going to stop you being consistent. It's going to allow you to throw in the towel a lot more prematurely. It's going to allow you to be negative and justify eating that cake, or I know these are cliche examples, eating that pizza because of this sort of negative view you have of whether you can do this or not, or in that case, not being able to do it. And so I think if you can actually work on mindset, if you work on overcoming bad habits, emotional eating, cravings, etc., if you can educate yourselves on these matters, learn about how to improve this, then it's going to make the whole process of sticking to a good meal plan, sticking to a good exercise program, a whole lot more easier. So, how do you make weight loss as easy as possible? You have a good plan that actually volume eating, moderate calorie deficit, all the stuff we've covered. You know, a decent, gentle exercise program that doesn't require you doing, we spoke about this earlier, loads of spin classes, boot camp classes that meet you at your level and it isn't a stretch too far that risks injury or burnout. So, you have the key variables of weight loss, but you also start working on developing a mindset that allows that strategy to stick more easily. And you don't have all this internal resistance. Weight loss is really hard, even with the easiest plan in the world, even with the best meal plan in the world. Weight loss is really hard if this isn't right. So that's how you make weight loss a bunch easier. You work on your mind, and with that, you ensure that your habits, your actions rather, through the exercise, it sticks to you a lot more easily. You're not fighting it at every single corner, every single day, every single meal. You don't have this big sort of self-talk negotiation. So yeah, like I said, I don't want to open that can of worms too much here. There's so much to talk about on it, but I'll link a video down below for a bit more info on mindset. But yeah, you want new habits and you want new attitudes. You want a new way of thinking, and that's going to make the process of losing weight easier. So that is it, everyone. I don't think we've had, because of the obscure time that I'm doing this, I don't know if we've actually had any questions, which feels very sad. You lot hate me. Very sad indeed. But I think, yeah, yeah, I don't think we do. Let me see. Do we have any questions? No, we don't. No, we don't. So I think we'll call it a day here. So those are using strategies making this process of losing weight considerably easier. I hope they help. Let me know which of these down below resonate. But if you do need more help, I'm on the lookout for ambitious vegans and plant-based dieters who are up to their first 30 pounds in just 12 weeks with easy vegan meals, no counting calories, remember, and a gentle exercise program. To learn more, simply fill out the form at veganslimandsustain.com, or that's veganslimandsustain.com, or simply click the link down below in the description box down below this video. And once you've filled out that form, I will be in touch with the details if you're a good fit for the program. Thanks all. Shame we didn't get any comments here. It's made me feel very unwanted and lonely. No, it hasn't. You guys know me. That's perfectly fine. But hopefully this was useful. Okay, see you all soon. Take care.